some singing bowls real quick before we get started. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this video today. Okay. We're going to talk about a few things. The calendar. So we're going to start with this. We're going to start with some basics because I've really been excited about learning, re-intuiting, remembering the Great Mother and all that she is showing us, and all that's happening with women in the world in a way that is showing to bring great thought change, great philosophical and spiritual and financial changes. Okay. Also, the calendars. Oh my gosh. I've learned so much about calendars that ultimately I don't know what they are. And we're going to talk about the eclipse. I'm gonna read the definition out of this big giant encyclopedic dictionary that I have, because it's interesting. It's just interesting words, what we've been taught, and I'll post. I'll say this. We've heard of the black sun, so there's been some. Speaking of astrology and calendars, because that's really what it all comes back to. So astrology and calendars, everything's a little it's a little off, because the information, this is the reason why we have all this information. And I love it. I love learning. I love finding information. I love it. I love it. And this is part of our brains. This is part of how our brains work. This is part of how our nervous system works. We like to learn. Typically, the brain likes to learn and bring in stuff. Well, it's a little off. So they've been just like everything. And why wouldn't it be? Because if the total truth is that we are supernatural elemental beings capable of literally creating planets and universes and people, literally civilizations, why would they give us all the information? They're going to piece the information out to us. It's going to come in pieces. Except for those who are remembering, those who intuit it, those who already have it within them. They're the ones. They're the reason for all the information. If you keep having information coming that is a little different than what you want the population to know, then you can keep them over here trying to figure out some kind of like proof and some facts in the situation. Meanwhile, a lot of these theories and, ideas from other people are happening. Like the calendar, for example, right? Okay. So, then we get into the amazing abilities of the Great Mother. So we're going to do the calendar first because the other part is so exciting. We talked about, because we're coming up on an eclipse, we're going to read the definition out of this giant book. And then this giant book really interestingly has the stars at the beginning and the front of the book on both hemispheres. And something I didn't recognize is like almost everything, like all the names of the people in almost all the mystery books and stories, new stories, Harry Potter, for example. These are all stars. They're all stars. And these are the main stars, and they do have like cluster formations. They have measurements. One is the northern hemisphere and one is the southern hemisphere. And that's the other thing. If you are on one of the other hemispheres, wouldn't that have something to do also with our astrology? Is that why we have an ascendant? To me, okay, here's my theories. Our astrology, our birth certificate, that's what that's about. It's about numbers and gematria, because before a certain amount of time, only people of royalty or of important status had birth certificates. So I'm guessing there was some kind of magic in that back then. And then we come to more recent times and people would write down like birthdays in books. Specifically, most people used a Bible, which is another something interesting, right? So, I like astrology. Don't get me wrong, I like astrology. It's just like now I'm like, but have I been? No. The direct answer is no. I've not been learning the correct astrology. Like if I go by correct astrology, I'm not a Gemini. Right? So, okay. So we're coming up on the eclipse. I did the calendar, the 9-day calendar, all the way until, let's see. Wait, is this? No. Okay, wrong calendar. All the way until June. And what I notice is a very unique pattern. Okay, so we're coming up on the eclipse, which is the 8th of April. Okay. And that is also the first day. So, here's what's interesting. Somebody talked about the black sun, and that the black sun is technically Mercury. I watched a video where they were talking about that. Actually, the eclipse is Mercury coming into play. And I always find it interesting that, especially nowadays, first of all, when I was younger, there were hardly any eclipses. You hardly ever heard about any eclipses, and if you did, it's because literally the sky got darker. Then, I would say in the last 10 years, there's all these eclipses all the time. Like, all the time. What? When did this start happening? It's like, were they always happening and we didn't know it? And then also when they were happening, even in California, it would be cloudy. It's cloudy. It's been cloudy. So, I noticed a pattern, and if we go by my usual wait a second, this is April. Go by my usual calculation, where my original calculation, where I would start the first day of the month on the first day of the new moon. The first day of the new moon would be the 7th. The second day of the new moon would be the 8th. So we're in a new moon on the 8th. And it would be Mercury by the old one. By the new one, it wouldn't relate to any planet except for the moon because of Monday, but that's on the Gregorian calendar. But it would be because it would be a day out. By the old one, it would be Mercury. By the new one, it would just be a day out because we would start the first day of the 9-day calendar, the first day after the new moon ends. So I just find that interesting that that's also eclipse day. It's also, we're not going to say that, but that's interesting because there's a theory that the eclipse is actually from Mercury, not from the moon, which is interesting because I just did a video like 2 or 3 days ago where the moon was still out while the sun was out. Is it the moon in front of the sun? I mean, and wouldn't okay. Wouldn't we see that? I don't know. I feel like there's something without any outside, without it being like the black sun. I was just thinking the other day, without hearing about this black sun Mercury theory, even though when I looked it up, the black sun was related to Saturn. Just makes it all confusing because who's giving us this information? What do they want us to know? What do they want us to do with it? Okay. But anyhow, I just saw the moon in the sky at the same time as the sun in the morning at like 9:30 in the morning or 10:30 in the morning. This was, I think, last week. So would it move all the way in front of the sun that quickly? I mean, it takes 10 days for us to get a new moon. No, more than 10 days. That's 9. So that's like 13 days. I think it's 13 days. Okay, so eclipse. Okay, eclipse. So eclipses from Greek ekliptisis, defect from eklipto, to fail. Ek, out, and liptio, to leave. An interception or obstruction of the light of the sun, moon, or other luminous body by the intervention of some other body, either between it and the eye or between the luminous body and that illuminated by it. Is this a little rhetoric going on here? to tell us that sometimes what they're telling us isn't always what they're telling us. Okay. An eclipse of the moon, for instance, being caused by the earth coming between it and the sun. A darkening or obstruction of splendor, brightness, or glory. Eclipsing. To cause the eclipse or obstruction of, to cloud, to darken, obscure, throw into shade, to cloud the glory of, to suffer an eclipse, example. And then it goes into elliptic, okay? Elliptic, which is from Latin, even though it originates from Greek. Latin, linea, ecliptia, the ecliptic line, or the line in which eclipses take place. A great circle of the celestial sphere supposed to be drawn through the middle of the zodiac, making an angle with the equinoctial of about 23 degrees to 27 longitude. I don't know. The little mark, 27 inches? I think that is 27 degrees, 27 inches. 23 degrees, 27 inches. The path which the sun, owing to the annual revolution of the earth, appears to describe among the fixed stars a great circle on the terrestrial globe, and answering to and falling within the plane of the celestial ecliptic, pertaining to or described by the ecliptic, pertaining to an eclipse. So, I find that very interesting. The original word eclipse comes from Greek. Oh, I apologize. It's Latin and Greek. Okay. So I find that interesting, for two reasons. One is they have the stars in the beginning of this book, that it's described that way for both the eclipse and eclipses, and we're coming up on an eclipse. So is Mercury going to be in front of the sun, and that's what's actually causing it? I've noticed some interesting things in the sky lately, but I don't have any proof. All I have are the calendars and what I've learned about the calendars, and then learning that the names of the months that we have. So there were 13 months. There were 9 days when it came to the Roman calendar. It was actually 8, and then they added one more day, and that was a day that they would do celebrations. That's where some of the 9-day week calendar comes from, and this is where calendar gets its name. So there was an original 9-day week, and then on the 9th day there would be a celebration. So they still included it, but it wasn't part of the week. So it would have been like a day out of the week. I don't even want to call it a week. That's not even the correct name. It's a calends. It's a representation of time, right? Because words, my goodness. I'm going to just turn this around, and hopefully you can see the pattern of the days. So the days on the top of each day of the timekeeping planet named schedule, aka known week. Week is like, when you're tired, when you're not healthy. Everyone's saying week all the time. This week, that week, weekend. Okay. The top one is the 9-day calendar, where it begins at the beginning of the new moon. The bottom of the day is when the first day of the 9-day calendar starts after the new moon. And I just noticed the pattern, and it kind of surprised me, and then also it didn't. You see, like Neptune, Venus, the week before, the schedule before. What do we call it? Gosh darn it. Grr. The week before matches the next week, like the days match, and oh my gosh, what? And it keeps going because I did it for next month, and it's in a pattern, but it skips one day. Oh, it's so weird. So this is kind of what I've concluded. They're using all the when I say they, wherever the information that we get pieces of, everything is being used. All the planets, all the stars. That's why it's in a thesaurus. This is why this is in a look at this. And this is and this is the cover on the front and the back, or the inside cover, right? This has law in it. We don't get books with law in it, and this book probably cost a lot of money way back in the day, and was also probably part of a binding spell. Okay, that spell's undone. Just saying. May it be undone. It's broken. It is undone, dispelled, and banished. So, if there was one. Maybe there wasn't. Books can be used for spells. Just saying. Especially if they haven't been bound and then you bind them. Don't do that. Don't do it. And if you have, you might want to burn that book. And you can do other stuff, but okay, I digress. My goodness. Coming back to the information that's in these kind of books that you don't find every day. Okay, so that information that's in the book about eclipses, and then also what I've just, to me, visually seeing these patterns, and also learning our stuff is a little off. Our calendars are a little off. Something's off. And we used to have 13, but they all fit in the year. We didn't have an extra month. Even my 9-day calendar fits in the year. That's why I use this to do it. Right? So these are just, it's like, what? When it comes to all the information, all this stuff, what? It's okay. My theory is it's to control our elemental gifts. And it's subtle. And it takes unpatterning and practice with our elemental gifts. It takes unpatterning this patriarchal, this nervous system programming of impulse. Because without actual fight or flight, rest and restore, and freeze and fawn, in healthy balances, you will do all those things in all these different ways. Watching the news, listening to stories about slavery, finding out the truth, finding out you've been lied to. These all do all these different things to your body constantly. Watching a football game, watching a basketball game, going out, coming back, going to school, going to work, going to the grocery store. Where is there actually time to recognize, like, whoa, wait a second. why am I buying this stuff? Why is this what I'm doing? Why are we all doing this? Is this what we're supposed to be doing? Gosh darn it. Okay. Now, yeah, we've kind of figured out this is not what we're supposed to be doing, and we're moving forward, and that we've been being lied to and tricked and all that stuff, and we're working on ourselves, and then we're seeing it outwardly. Okay, so the reason why I'm so very excited is because this is another one. This is another huge one. I feel like this has already been happening here in the Americas and all around the world, as far as women like myself and women of my generation. I'm a Gen Xer, if you don't know. And we didn't even know that that's what we were doing. We started decentering men a long time ago. We started not intentionally, not like we were like, we're going to decenter men. It was just like, I'm so sick of men. I want to get my life together. I want somebody who is willing to get their own place and get their own job and take care of their own self before I make this decision. And I had changed my mind several times in that, and I have definitely been what people have described like the pick me girl, because our culture kind of trains women, especially if you're not super pretty and popular, or well, I was popular in high school, but I was the only brown girl. So in their community, I was not pretty, right? So I was never picked, ever. And oftentimes was always like the girl with all the other people, which in the long run, like, oh, good. I'm so glad I grew up without, being in that kind of, like, in retrospect, I'm glad. Anyhow, our culture kind of puts, to me, at least how I grew up, and I think that this is, I mean, we see it on TV with, like, how you're supposed to look and all, especially women, like, we're supposed to be, like, gorgeous, smart. We also have an amazing house and friends. And then we also have a social life and children and everything. We are able to do everything and look beautiful and never complain all at the same time. And even if you are not directly raised that way and you grow up in the world, you may internalize that depending on your own household. Like, how are you growing up? How are your parents treating you? Are you know what I'm saying? So, but I say all that because, have you all heard of the 4B movement? And I want to just say, like, is it a movement, or is it, to me, this is Great Mother showing up like, I told y'all that I'm showing up again, and this is how it's going to look. If you haven't heard of it, I feel like probably everybody has. And okay, it started in Korea from a book. So a woman wrote a fiction book talking about the treatment of women, specifically herself, in Korea. And so women read the book, and it spread, and women related to it, and through the book decided, I guess, I haven't read the book, to represent that, and began deciding no to these 4 things. And the word no starts with B. It's actually like B-I, spelled B-I. And so it's the 4 B's. And anyways. So it's no sex with men, not marrying men, no relationships with men, and no children with men. anymore. And it started in 2019, and apparently now, and for a while before, but increasingly Korea has the lowest birth rate in the world. And the women are saying basically like, we will shut this down. And it's not all women, and it's not the idea that it's the idea that this is my interpretation from what patriarchy has programmed and supported, which is the exploited resources of the divine feminine in home and having children, and then and without a voice, without actually being able to say, I don't want to get married, I don't want to have children, I don't want to do this. Many cultures, and from what I understand in South Korea, but this is around the world, where it is expected that women, this is why there's even a pick me group, that women are expected to go into a relationship, have children, do all the things I just said. They are literally expected to, and women who don't do that have been mistreated. They are considered like all the things you've heard, like an old maid, and what is your purpose in life if you didn't have children, and you must be so lonely because you didn't have a family, you didn't have children. And even if you don't completely agree with that, the culture agrees with that. Has. Now everyone's figuring out, like, wait a second. Because women are not treated well. And this is around the world. You can see this around the world. And I know I'm talking about all men, because I know plenty of married people who are pretty happy and they feel okay. Like, that's okay. If that's good, and that's obviously a guy who is not who I'm talking about. Okay? I'm not talking about that guy. I'm talking about the other guys who think that abuse should be okay because you're a woman and you say you love them. Like, I get to be a jerk because I love you so much. And, putting down women because they don't want to put up with that. Because you have a good job, or because you help clean around the house, but you're still lying and cheating and not really doing anything. I mean, so I think that that's really cool. And then what I have seen, I'm all for it. I mean, I'm all for women. Period. I'm for women. And if you do want to, however you are, as long as you're not hurting anybody or yourself, like, and I feel like this about everybody, but specifically women, who cares what you're doing? Oh, okay. So there's been this, like, even women saying, well, what's going to happen? This could end if women around the world decided to do this, more so than they already are, it could literally end the human race, right? Because women wouldn't have children anymore, right? I mean, or at least bring it down to a smaller population, which would change finances, the whole medical system. I mean, the medical system is literally based on people. And where do you go when you have a baby? In most places, you go to the hospital. So there's this whole thing with that, which, women used to have babies all over the world, not in hospitals. And having children is a risk to the woman and the actual child, right? It's a miracle. This is why it's considered a miracle, because wow. So speaking of miracles, and just saying, because I've talked a little bit about it, and many of us sea stars on YouTube and other platforms have talked about Parthenogenesis. So here's what's interesting. Parthenon means virgin temple. Parthenogenesis means virgin Genesis, like Genesis in the Bible, Genovisis, meaning virgin birth. So as this 4B movement is coming out, and there seems to be this reaction, there is this stingray, Charlotte, in captivity, who is pregnant. And guess how? Through parthenogenesis. And like I was saying earlier, what do they try to tell people at first? That the stingray was impregnated by a shark. So they're trying to say, and then SNL had a skit about it, but the person playing the stingray was a brown great mother representation, even though they made jokes about it and like in ways that I was like, really? Because it's parthenogenesis. But anyhow, it's a miracle. It's quote unquote a miracle. But there's plenty of creatures here on this planet who do parthenogenesis. Apparently, stingrays haven't done it for a long time, and this one is considered a California stingray. Y'all. One of the other creatures that does parthenogenesis on a regular are snakes and the kimono dragon. So we don't need men. Mother Nature is literally showing us. I mean, and I don't like men a lot. I will straight out say that, but I'm not anti-man. It's true. It's my personal, I mean, there are men in my life that I love and care about. I have brothers. There are people in my life. I have been in relationships. There are men I have loved. I don't really like them. I don't think even the ones I have loved tremendously were not the most awesome. So, and I've met not so awesome women, but it's just more consistent, and it just bums me out, because the older I get, but there are good ones out there, and I love them. Okay. In general, though, we're just saying, sure, let's keep the good ones, and then the rest of them we don't need to, obviously, and we don't need you to make babies. If it exists in nature. So somebody left a comment on one of my videos saying that, I'm not even gonna. Anyhow, if it exists in nature, it exists. This is how we learned everything. Everything that even they teach us, we learned in nature. Okay. Is that everything I want to talk about? Yeah, the calendar, the eclipse, Parthenogenesis, and the 4B movement, which it's like a mirror. It's literally like Mother saying, I'm saving myself. I'm saving us. I'm saving my daughters. My daughters are going to save the planet. And this is how they're going to do it. And it's not violent. It's totally peaceful. There's nothing wrong with it. It's women taking their power back and saying, we have control over this planet, not you guys. We're the baby makers. You want the world to continue? just feel like it's more proof that God is female. The greater being is female. Okay. Thanks for being here and listening, and we'll see you next time.